And I realized like, that's really, people need that. Like we just need to be coming home to our hearts over and over and over again. That's my deep conviction.
Hello, and welcome to the Connect podcast. This show is all about helping you connect to your soul's calling so you can take action on it. Because the sweetest success is a blend of discovering your purpose with the inner drive to bring it to life. I'm Sheila, health coach, lifestyle entrepreneur, and mom of two, best known for my online wellness programs, mentoring, and self-love passion. Listen in for inspiring interviews, solo chats, and Q&A sessions that will move you past overwhelm towards what lights you up. Stop accepting good enough and go for your version of great in your health, business, and relationships. Let's get started. Welcome to this week's interview. I've had so much fun getting to know today's guest. Moller is a singer, editor, actress, coach, dancer, and muse. Her vision is all about opening and connection. We talked about discovering her gifts and having them nurtured at a young age, life in the arts, performance, and heart-centered living. Anne is a classically trained mezzo-soprano with a BA in English from Yale University and decades of experience and training in the fields of creativity, personal growth, spirituality, and entrepreneurship. She has worked and trained closely with a variety of experts, including a Tony Award-winning choreographer and an Academy Award-winning actress, to name a few, as well as her birth family of fierce and extraordinary women. All Anne does comes from the desire to share and to be with others straight from the heart. I feel like we achieved that today. Enjoy the conversation. Anne, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
I am looking forward to hearing about what is lighting you up right now. I feel like there's so many directions we could take because you are, from what I can see, a very multi-passionate, creative person. And you have a very empathic personality as well. So feeding all of those things together and talking about just one thing can be really challenging. So I'm going to start with creativity. Okay. So I went to an arts high school for vocal music. And at the time I was a second soprano. Now I'm probably more of a mezzo soprano. Mm-hmm. And I have amazing memories harmonizing. There's something special about that. And you are a classically trained mezzo soprano with a BA in English from Yale University. You're an intuitive. You're a creative muse, a singer, an editor, a coach, an actress, a dancer, a healer. And all of these things really embody creativity, and it seems to just flow through you. So please share how music, writing, acting, how did it all come into your life? And what was the creative flame? Like, how did it get stoked in you? Just take us on the journey of you discovering your purpose.
Wow. Well, thank you for that amazing introduction. That was like, I was sort of receiving that in waves of energy to hear somebody say all those things. Thank you. I would say just from the get-go as a kid, I was all about playing make-believe, writing stories, reading, playing dress up, all of those things, doing arts and crafts. And that was very much nurtured, I would say, in my family. Oh, and then also like imagination. There was a lot of stuff from my mom and other women in my life, sort of really fanning the flames of our imaginations with, talking about fairies and doing rituals and things like that. So there was always this sense of so many possibilities and things could be happening that are magical that we don't even see, So that, I think, was the beginning. And then my godmother married a famous actor when I was about 9, I think. And then as I became, I was pretty close with her growing up, my godmother, and I used to call her my fairy godmother. Aww. And sort of as I was coming of age, I started to spend more time with them. And I just really identified something about the way that they lived their life and the way that he lived his life as an actor. And he kind of took me under his wing pretty early. But actually, I would say even before that, I started doing, I was always into all the art stuff at school. I was super not into sports like ever, except when I absolutely have to do them. And and then I think I did get a lot of positive feedback from teachers and stuff about my writing, so that was always part of my thing. And then also I just enjoyed it. And then singing, I think, kind of came first. I always sang as a kid, like I loved to sing just for always. And then I eventually started to feel this sense of like, oh, maybe something's like kind of flowing through me that's a little bit different than not in a better than way, but just in a different way than maybe some other people around me at a young age. And then when I did some acting stuff, just in like plays, even in a classroom, I remember I had this one class assignment where I think I had to play a judge in a skit or something like that. And I just sort of became a different person, and it felt really powerful to me. So that was kind of an early spark, and that was even before all the stuff happened with my godfather. And then, at junior high, that time of life is super difficult. Like, you could not pay me millions of dollars to be that age again. And there was a lot going on in my family. There was a lot of changes afoot. I mean, the big changes didn't really happen until later, but there was stuff going on in my family. And also I had trouble with, bullying with girls my age. And so I think what happened was there were some early sparks around the different forms of creativity. And then around like 13, 14, I kind of found my tribe, and it was in the theater. And then at the same time, I was going every year to have my spring break with my godparents wherever they were living. And I used to go visit my godfather on his TV set, and he would introduce me to all the actors, and I got to watch him do his thing. And I just was introduced to amazing people at a really young age who always treated me, even though I was a kid, they treated me like an equal and like I had something to say. Yeah, so it was a combination of that with the adults, and then also finding with acting and singing, there just was this freedom that I didn't always feel in my sort of regular life. And also, I come from a WASPy family. I was at a prep school, a tiny prep school here in Maine. There was just a feeling of things being kind of tamped down a lot, and it sort of drove me nuts. So it was really important for me to have outlets to kind of break out. So that was kind of how that happened. And then I basically decided at like 13 or 14 that I was going to be an actor.
I think it's amazing that you had such a rich connection to an acting community before high school. And so you felt, here's that really cool feeling of that acceptance that they had for you, and not looking at you as your age, but you as like a full creative being, because they could relate, I'm sure, to get into their careers and to move ahead in their careers. They had to go through the obstacles of people questioning, what are you going to do this for? Isn't that like, how are you going to make it? Like, it is a big deal to make it.
Yeah.
And so to see someone forming this connection of what they want to do, I've heard that a lot from creative people, that they've had other creative people kind of hold their hand, guide their way. And I think it's beautiful you had that at such a young age. Would we know your godfather?
Yes, he passed 12 years ago, but Roy Scheider, he was the guy who in Jaws, he said, we're going to need a bigger boat. And he also was nominated for an Oscar he played Bob Fosse in All That Jazz, which is one of, I think, best performances. So, his big time was mostly before I even knew him, but he had a long career, and he worked, and he was really an actor's actor is what we would call, so, and it was like that with those people. And then also at 14, I went to a summer theater camp where we did Shakespeare. And I always kind of joked like Shakespeare saved my life, because that group of people and those teachers and that way of exploring and working kind of did.
Oh, yes. I can imagine like those formative years, like you said, not wanting to go back to, the junior high years can be really difficult. High school can be so challenging for people because it can be so cliquey. But when you found your tribe, and when you found, especially again, going to an arts high school, I loved going to school, and everybody was different. And my first friend had like 10 colors of hair. And I came from the country, so I was like, wow, I'm in the city now. And something about just that warm acceptance, the freedom to blossom into your gifts and to not
Yeah.
be afraid of making mistakes or looking foolish because everybody's doing it at the same time. And it's all
Yeah.
creativity. There's no box. Take the box away.
Yes.
So that's kind of the beginning. And then how did you know that Yale was going to be the place for you? How did that,
Oh,
did you have the discussion of, do I want to just pursue acting? Do I want to pursue writing? Like, what was that like? Because that could have been a very interesting conversation.
yeah, it was. And I would say I still am kind of in it. To be honest.
Both and.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first off, I had my 8th grade English teacher was pretty extraordinary. His name was Mr. McMahon, and anybody who went to North Yarmouth Academy knew him and adored him. And I remember when I started acting, he said to me, I hope that you won't give up your writing and just do acting because I think you're really gifted. So that was an interesting piece of feedback. And then, yeah, you know what? I did a ton of theater, both in school and out of school throughout high school, musicals, Shakespeare. It was a bit of a dilemma at the time. It felt like a dilemma in terms of, do I go to a conservatory and just go straight full on, performing, or do I go to a liberal arts? And I always had been, super nerdy and into school. So, I have a lot of friends, actor and singer and dancer friends who weren't like that. And I had gone also, in addition to the Shakespeare thing, I had gone to this other summer program that was just for musical theater. And that was founded by the Tony Award-winning choreographer Anne Reinking. And she had incredible people there anyway. But the point is that I was also around a lot of kids who were like pursuing this for sure. I didn't end up applying to any places that were just straight conservatories. That just didn't feel right to me. And I'd done a professional production of a show here in Portland, Maine, with a director from Seattle. And he had gone to Yale, and he sort of suggested that I not give up the opportunity to have a good liberal arts education, whatever that means. And that kind of stuck with me because I really respected him. So then I did apply to Northwestern, was the only one that was a kind of a pseudo conservatory. And then I just went with schools that were liberal arts but had really strong theater programs. And honestly, the reason that I decided to go to Yale was, for one thing, because it's Yale, but also... but really, no, truly it was when I went there to visit, the tour guide was a member of one of the sketch comedy groups on campus, and he ran into a friend of his from the group during our tour, and they were doing this like banter, and I was like, okay, this is like, these people are amazing. This is where I need to be,
Oh, I love it.
And also I knew that the school it attracts a lot of really talented, passionate kids because of the reputation. And so it's not a conservatory, but you kind of learn by doing, because like every weekend, basically, there were anywhere from 2 to 10 different shows going on. And almost all of them were student run.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's like...
Amazing. Oh, that's such a great foundation to then leap off into your independent life. You had so much great actual hands-on knowledge with all of these other creative folks and people who are, oh my goodness, they're teaching at Yale.
It was also intimidating. I definitely was, you go from big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a big pond. But that's part of the process too,
So much richness to be learned from that experience as well. And so after that, is that when you moved into the big city? And then what was your first foray into acting after university?
Yep, I went straight to New York after college, and I got a job as an editorial assistant at Random House. So that's what I did when I first started. Mm-hmm. And then the woman who was my boss did me a big favor. And about 5 months in, she sat me down and she said, I think that you are an artist. And in order to do the job that you're doing, you need to basically want to be me. And I don't think that this is what you want.
Wow.
And
What a
so,
gift.
yeah, it was amazing. I mean, it was like intense, but it was a gift. And
Now you can see
so
that.
then yeah, no, yeah. No, I mean, I saw it fairly quickly. Even if it feels harsh in the moment, when somebody can like see you and kind of reflect some truth back to you, I feel like it's almost always a gift, you
Mm.
know, unless it's done in an abusive way, which is a whole other thing. But I mean, she was doing it to take care of her business, but she also didn't have to give me that feedback. She could have just said, this isn't working, bye, you know? So I left that job and then went started to do all kinds of freelance things. And probably within 2 or 3 months of leaving that job, I got a role playing Anya in the cherry orchard at this theater out in the Hamptons. And that was my first gig after college. And it was like beautiful.
Did you feel
Yeah.
like you had kind of arrived at the beginning of the path you really wanted to be on?
I did. And then, you know, my path as an actor has been super duper full of stops and starts and circuitous. And it definitely has not had the trajectory that I planned. And it frankly hasn't had the trajectory that many of my peers have had. But at the same time, there's a lot of perfection in that. And yes, to answer your question, I did. I was like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, I'm doing this. And the whole experience of exploring that character and working with that ensemble and was an amazing experience. And also it was near where my godparents lived. So my godfather coached me on the side, which was incredible.
And what a beautiful experience of having that relationship, not only learning through that, but having that closeness with him, because as you mentioned, he did end up passing away.
Yeah.
And so you'll always have that memory. There's nothing like that.
Yeah.
And so all along through all of this, did you know how intuitive you were? Did you have an understanding in terms of what you felt you should be doing? Or was it something that was a realization all of a sudden?
Um, yeah, I was always deeply spiritual and I always felt a connection to various aspects of that, but I did not know that I was intuitive until I was an adult, until like fairly late is kind of relative. But I mean, I occasionally would have people over the years tell me, oh, that was really insightful, or, you know, that sort of thing. Or people telling me that my energy felt healing to them or things like that. But it really wasn't until, I don't know, maybe a handful of years ago when we started to do these meditations called a divine love meditation, which is from Robert Fritchie at the World Service Institute. And we would do them when I say we, I'm talking about my family, for each other, or for like if somebody was having surgery or sick or whatever, we would just do it together.
Mm.
And almost every time that we did it, I would receive basically like a mini movie would just come through in the 2 minute. The meditation is literally 2 minutes, and I get like a whole movie.
Wow.
So, and then when I would share them with people, because we would always share like, oh, I felt this energy, or I saw this image, or I heard this song, or whatever. Often people would say that what had come through really resonated for them. So that was kind of an early clue. And then also, I will say I've always been I feel like aware of synchronicity, and also synchronicity happens in my life a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that maybe, but I wasn't aware of it as like an intuitive thing per se. And then somebody said, well, my mom said, the only reason I hesitate is because I'm really aware of how much I talk about my family and my influences. But the truth is that I've been gifted a lot of mentoring in my life, and that's amazing. So anyway, she said she thought that I could do something with it and help a lot of people. And I sort of was like, okay, whatever. I have no idea what that would look like. So I'm just going to keep moving on. Thank you for sharing. And then I had a reading with another woman who actually is about my age and had been an actor in LA. And she had left that business and become an intuitive. And in that particular one, she said, I think you could do what I'm doing. And so I didn't really know how to do it. And she gave me some suggestions on how to begin. And I did. And I mean, I literally said, I have no idea if I can do this. So I just started offering 30-minute like trial, things to my friends for $20 as just a test, basically. And they were all like super powerful. So after that, I went, oh, okay, I guess it was super powerful. And the other piece was that I felt like a sense of profound relief once I started doing this work. And I think it's because it was like a current of, I don't know, awareness or energy or something that had been running under the surface of my life always that I wasn't aware of. And that, I mean, I wasn't consciously aware of. And so then when I had a channel for it, it was like, oh God, thank you.
And now it's led
Yeah.
to this whole different path for you that is also very creative. And you've put your own creative spin on it, which we're going to talk about a little later too. And for those who are listening who don't know Anne's family history, her mother is Dr. Christian Northrup. So, like you've said, you have these influences of beautiful mentoring in your life. And that is a beautiful gift. And it gives me a lot of comfort, actually, because as a mother myself, we hope that some of the things we tell our kids and model for our kids, they will actually take to heart and that they will actually trust us enough to follow their intuition and live the life that is meant for them
Yeah.
and not make themselves small. And that's one thing that I do appreciate about your mom. One of the many things is the potential is limitless.
Yeah.
And you were steeped in that. And now here you are. You're actually sharing that as
Yeah.
well. You've worked with a variety of people in gaining clarity and doing inner
Mm-hmm.
healing, and as a result, helping them more effectively share their gifts. And so I want to share for you, again, mirroring back some of the good things people have said about you and this intuitive side of your work for people
Oh,
to get an idea, some of the testimonies that people have shared about you. One is from Vivi Lavoie, creator of Opera Burlesque, says, Annie has a unique, rare ability to deeply understand my vision. I highly recommend her. And then Danielle Laporte, best-selling author of The Desire Map and the Firestarter Sessions, says, your philosophical insight and your deep integrity add up to much gratitude and respect. Thank you for making the Desire Map sing. And then also the Yale Daily News says, hearing her sing is a breathless experience. And I can attest to that after hearing you sing on a couple of occasions. And so, since moving more deeply into your purpose and knowing that you've made this impact on people around you, how do you combine the creative and intuitive in your current work?
yeah. Thank you for asking. And thanks for reading those. I mean, of course, I've read them, but it's very different to hear somebody say them out loud. And to clarify, some of those people are intuitive clients and some of them are coaching and some of them are editing. I was the content editor on the Desire Map. So that was a real collaborative, amazing experience. How do I combine the two? Well, I mean, some of it is sort of divided, so to speak, meaning, so for example, like literally in my current life, I have a weekly acting class, which I attend on Zoom, which is taught by my teacher from New York, who's teaching on Zoom. And that takes up a significant portion of my energy and time for the week because it involves preparation and da 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 da. And I'm not auditioning at this moment in time, but I keep growing in my craft. And then I have some writing and maybe cabaret things percolating of my own work, but that's not a huge focus at this moment in time. Then I do intuitive sessions that are just straight intuitive sessions. And then, as you know, I also do sometimes some new and or full moon gatherings in a group online. And so that's like a collective reading, so to speak, and meditation. And then recently, as you know, I've started combining the things in a completely different way, which is through this thing called a soul song session. And that is basically over the last several months, I've had a series of experiences and insights that have really brought home to me how vital music is to our well-being, to our healing, to our connection, to our resilience, to all of it, right? And so that led me to eventually have a thought, I think while I was driving, because this is one of the places where thoughts occur, ideas occur to us, like driving or shower or whatever.
Absolutely, all the time.
Right? And it's also a good place to practice lines, just, FYI for
Mm.
anybody who's doing that. And this idea just came to me of, well, so maybe you just bring the singing to the healing work, because what has always happened, even before these last several months, with all of those experiences around music, my thing with singing and acting really has always been, it's a spiritual practice and a sacred offering. So some of the time that's not maybe been great for me in terms of making it, so to speak, in the business, but it's my truth. And my experience with singing is with like regular people, civilians, as in like non-actors. I mean, if I'm outside the business, right? If I'm just in a situation to offer from like the humblest, most open space, people always cry when I sing. Like it's been happening for my whole life. And I realize like that's really, people need that. Like we just need to be coming home to our hearts over and over and over again. That's my deep conviction.
Yes.
So I thought, I have so much of my life over here and then over here, and they don't have to be so separate. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm only singing when I'm doing a show tune for a musical audition. Now I do sessions where they conclude with a song, and then that's specifically chosen for the person. And I often do not say anything after the song, except maybe like blessings, just as I want people to be able to be in the feeling that is coming up. And then I do include them in the group things now as well. And it's been interesting because as I've been kind of going through like what are the types of songs to include in that repertoire, some of them are healing songs and some of them are bridging the gap and bringing musical theater songs that say something that I feel is useful to say in a different context in our lives.
I've experienced this on a number of times in a yoga class and it was a hot yoga class, right? Which can be so intense. And I love those and I miss anyway. And then the end of the class, you're lying in Shavasana. This wonderful yoga teacher brings out her guitar and she writes music as well. So she plays it and it's just like the perfect song for everyone. It's like you're saying the exact thing I needed to hear. And tears, all of us are getting tears in our ears because we're lying down and the tears are flowing directly from our eyes into our ears because it's so emotional and you've just exerted yourself and you're hot and you've released. And I feel like it's the best final release and almost like a catalyzation of whatever you may have experienced from the class, but for you from the session, it's like it almost cements it in. So I love that you followed your intuition to make it happen because we can question, what is the right way to do things? And I didn't mention the other person in your life who is a very public figure, which is your sister, Kate Northrup. And what she said in a coaching call one day was, do what lights you up. So I remind myself of that often. And now I'm sharing that with other people. And that's what you're doing. And in doing so, you are helping other people light up in the process. So you recently celebrated Thanksgiving in the US. And on that day, you posted a beautiful prayer. And during this remarkable time of shifting and polarity, I found it to be very unifying and it tapped into where your heart is at. And that's one thing you portray into the world, unification and connection and healing, not only in your work, but just as you're living your life. And I think it's a message everyone really needs to hear. Would you mind reading it to us?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks for that reflection. That's certainly my intention. People who know me really well will say I don't always succeed because we're all human, but that is my intention and my mission. Yeah, so I posted on Instagram a photo of cranberries that we were using for the pear cranberry sauce. And I wrote this: giving thanks to the land, the plants, the animals, the sky, the water, the earth, the fire. Giving thanks to the Abenaki people for this land upon which we stand. They are part of the Wabanaki Confederacy. That's here in Maine specifically. Giving thanks for Turtle Island and all of the indigenous people who dwelled and continue to dwell here, honoring the wisdom, sacredness, and dignity here, the beauty, majesty, strength, ingenuity, and resiliency. Acknowledging the history of pain, tragedy, injustice, tyranny, colonization, murder, and domination here. Standing for reinvention, healing, harmony, grace, reconciliation, alchemy, courage, awakening, honesty, humility, equality, integrity, restoration, and love here, and plighting our troth to these. Also giving thanks for my own family's traditions and foods and songs on this day, and my birthday sometimes falling on this day. Feeling the paradox of it all, letting it all be in. It's all in this moment, this place, this time, this heart, this body, this lineage, honoring all of what is in your heart, your body, your lineage. I am sure I am doing this wrong, but this is our history. This is my prayer in this breath right now.
As I listen to that, it makes me take a deep breath. And I feel like this prayer is for all of us. It gave me another glimpse, like I said, at what you really carry in your heart. And the world needs more of it. Yes, in all of our imperfection as we go out and live our lives, we have grace on that. And yet, if 1% of that can be lived out each day by each of us, imagine the beautiful effects. Mm-hmm. Thank you for reading that. And thank you for writing it. It shows your writing prowess. The word selection, I really appreciate. I love to read. I love words and the weight that they can carry and the beautiful way that you can describe things with them. You have shared in your writings that you have a desire to be able to share and be with another straight from your hearts and souls. And this resonates for me, I'm sure with many of our listeners also. It can also be challenging for empathetic souls. How do you navigate the dance between being open-hearted and having boundaries?
It's so funny that you would ask me that because I literally am, walking through a bit of a process with that recently. I mean, I think the short version is I don't know, but how I'm practicing it is being really connected to my body and my breath and what's going on in my body and my feelings, so that in any given moment, if I'm feeling overwhelmed or, to use an overused term, but people understand it, triggered, or if I'm having, I've learned for myself personally, when I'm feeling dizzy, unless it's like because of low blood sugar or something, it's a trauma response for me. So for example, if I'm feeling dizzy, that's a cue. And so I am paying attention as much as I can to what's going on inside me and my body. And then that means that first, that helps me separate myself from the people around me, which has not always been easy. It's still not easy, but like I can do it a little more. And also it allows me to then use my tools and take responsibility, because the truth is, some of the stuff that I think most people who are empaths and highly sensitive people and all of that, some of it is trauma for a lot of us. But the truth is, like, of course, we want people to treat us with respect and be sensitive and all of that. But also not everybody walks around feeling like this kind of raw all the time. So it's taking a responsibility also, like, this is an experience I'm having. And so what is fair and okay for me to ask for in terms of support from the people around me? And also, where do I need to just like do something different to take care of myself? So often it's literally, I definitely have been practicing more and more lately. When somebody starts talking to me about something, if I either don't have time or I'm not available for the intensity of that subject matter at the time, I might say, I'm not able to have this conversation right now, but I'm interested in hearing about this at another time. Or, if I'm not going to say that, but I can say I'm not able to have this conversation right now.
That is such great wording, right? Like, everybody take notes. We need to use this because it's okay. It's the truth and it's how you're feeling.
Not a statement or judgment about them. I also want to just sort of put a plug in for, I think Pia Melody's work around boundaries is incredible. And she has all kinds of stuff on YouTube and books. And I mean, her stuff about boundaries like blows my mind, honestly. But another thing that I do often is I literally imagine a column of light, a vertical column of light and energy surrounding me when I'm going to be around other people. And if I forget, and then there's something that's triggering or challenging, then I will sometimes turn that on around myself just to kind of help me ground and remember that I do have an energetic field that's my own. And then speaking of grounding, I do use things like imagery of roots or a cord dropping from the base of my spine, the things that I do in the groups. You sort of alluded to this a little bit. This is a very heightened time. And conversations can get really heated really fast, especially if we're having conversations with people whose views are different from ours. And I also, to be perfectly blunt, I grew up in a family where my parents had really different views a lot. And I learned, for better or for worse, I learned how to navigate that. And it was challenging, but I think that as an adult, it's actually been an asset in some ways. One thing that I've found really helpful is asking questions instead of assuming. Also, the more that I can just be honest and vulnerable about what I'm feeling without asking the other person to take care of it, but just because things can get so riled up so quickly. And the vast majority of the time, it's because you have two people who are coming from their wounds and their traumas and their fears. And if one person can take a step back and slow down and take a breath and say, this is how I'm feeling. And it doesn't always, like if you're talking to somebody who like really doesn't have any empathy, then that's not going to work. But with a lot of people, it softens the thing,
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It's something all of us run into from time to time for sure. And now, especially with, I think, people being so in close quarters much of the time. And like you say, the time that we're in has been very polarizing. My spiritual background really is very much in the church. And so I've come through a lot of self-awareness of the boxes of thinking that people have put themselves in, and being Canadian and being in the type of faith system that I have been in for the last 15 years. Open-hearted, peacemaking, Jesus followers, and really looking at the peace teachings of Christ instead of just the liturgy. When we look through that lens of love, it opens us up to really seeing people for where they are and looking with no judgment, because I really believe that's my calling. I believe is all of our calling to not judge. It's really not our place. And when we take that judgment away, we can really see people for who they are and the beauty that they have and how much in common we have. And so dealing with boundaries, if we can say what we want, say what we need, and then feel comfortable with who we are and accepting the other person, it just makes life so much easier. Thank you for sharing your boundary tips. And it's going to change depending on the season and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure, right? So now here we are. Again, I just feel like I could spend a whole afternoon chatting with you.
So many threads. I'm like, we could do a whole other thing about Christianity, about, and also there's so many, I didn't realize that we actually have quite a few threads in common, which is really cool. So
well, I knew we had some things in common because of the aspect. I'm like, I can't wait. So we'll have to maybe do a part 2 sometime. My last question for you now is, what do you envision for your future, and where can we find and follow you? Is there an offering that you're working on that we should watch for?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah. I am doing the individual intuitive sessions and soul song sessions for people on an ongoing basis. So that's something that you can book directly on my website, or I do offer a sliding scale because I felt called to do that at this time. The best way to catch me is really to just DM me on Instagram, or there's also a contact on the website. And then I'm not, to be honest, totally clear what it's going to look like exactly, but I am preparing to create a group thing soon, because the Instagram lives that I've been doing I will still do those occasionally, but I want to facilitate and midwife a group that are people who are really wanting to be in that container on a regular basis. And so that's going to be either by fee or by donation. I haven't honestly decided yet. And that will start, I think, in January, maybe late December, but probably in January. So people can get on my list from my website. If you just put yourself in there to get the healing song and meditation audios, then you're on my list.
What is your website address?
Oh, yes. It's AnnMollerTheMuse.com.
I love that, the Muse.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's where you can find me.
Wonderful.
And how do I see my future? Oh, goodness. I really feel at this moment in time, things feel a little bit like a wild card in kind of the larger global, I don't know, there's just so much going on and so much that's unknown. That being said, I certainly envision continuing to do this healing, intuitive oracle work and the singing work and combining them. And then I also intend to continue acting and probably leaning in the direction of writing and producing some of my own stuff, because I have a lot of feelings and thoughts about what stories are being told and what we're missing. And especially in this time, I think it has been for many people a time of taking stock and reflecting. And when the stakes of life feel so much higher, maybe that's not the right word, but the stakes feel different.
Mm-hmm.
now. And so I feel a sense of, if I'm going to do all of the effort required to do a role, I need it to feel like it's contributing something to the world that means something.
I just got shivers because I think this is why you are here at this place in your life. We can often question, other people's careers are going this direction, that direction. And I'm like, not sure because I'm doing these different things. Everything happens for a reason. And the timing right now is really ripe for exactly what you're talking about. And I love that we're seeing it make its way up in various retail establishments, online establishments, communities, and movies and TV. Like, we're seeing it. And I feel like you're at the perfect spot to do such a thing and to use all of those different gifts that you have that we've talked about. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited too. I feel this sentiment that I've heard from a number of spiritual teachers that I resonate with, of like, you were born for this time. That's a pretty grandiose thing to say, but I actually do feel that way. I've had times when I haven't been sure, why am I here? And this is not what I signed up for. And life on planet Earth is, whatever. So it feels there's like a coming together that feels right.
Love
that
it.
Makes any sense.
Total sense. So wonderful, Anne. I'm so grateful that you took time from your busy schedule to spend with me doing this. I'm really honored that you're here today.
Oh, thank you. I'm really honored to be here. It's not often that I get a chance to talk about this stuff, so it's delightful. Thank you.
Well, I hope people get opportunities to hear it lots more in the future.
Thank you.
Friends, thank you for listening. And there was so much that we talked about in this conversation. And Anne and I would love to know what's emerging for you after listening. Please let us know by taking a screenshot of this episode and tagging me at Sheila A. Botello and tagging Anne at Anne without an E, C. Moller. It's such a gift hearing what resonated for you. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here with me on the Connect podcast. If you like this episode, please share it with someone you think would enjoy it. Also, if you head over to iTunes to leave a review, I'd be so grateful. Let us know what your favorite parts were and what you'd like to hear more of. It will help us have a greater impact, elevating many more people to grow and succeed together. See you next time.